Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the tech hiring stage, sponsored by HackerJob. We've got another fantastic talk lined up for you all. Hope you're not all too hot and bothered. We'll try and make sure it's light and entertaining. We've got a fantastic speaker lined up for you. So now we're going to be talking about scaling smarter, data-driven hiring for tech scale-ups. Scaling a tech talent team is tough. Doing it with leaner TA teams, tight budgets, and a legacy ATS can be a real slog, and I'm sure that's something that a lot of us in this room can empathize with. That's why I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce Luke Eaton, who's the head of recruiting at Matter Labs, who's going to show you how to scale smarter using data. This isn't fluffy metrics talk, so Luke, over to you.
Ooh. Hello. First of all, am I audible? At the back and the front, I'm not blowing anyone's brains out. And you can hear me at the back. Turn up. Up. Am I audible now? Yes? Quieter. There we go. Is that better? Super. All right. Hello, my gorgeous recruitment nerd brothers and sisters. How are you all doing? Good. Still got the energy from all the heat delirium. It's amazing to be sitting down and talking with everyone about data-driven recruitment. And this is my tribe, recruitment nerds. And thank you to HackerJob for having me on their lovely stage. I was really looking forward to this as well because of the heat. Everyone's got these fans, and it just reminds me of like one of those gospel churches in the 30s. Everyone's like, preach the data-driven recruitment, Luke. So that's going to be fun. My name's Luke. I'm that guy there, most redundant picture ever. You're all going to be looking at me. And what I do is, for the past 14 years, I've been in recruitment. But for the past 8 or so, my role has been to embed into scaling tech companies, usually with some kind of venture capital backing. So someone's given them a big wheelbarrow full of cash. So there you go, kids. You quadruple the size of the business, and we'll come back and sell you to Accenture or something. And my role has been to set up the tools, processes, systems, best practices needed to scale. But scale in a way where they keep caliber high, and to make sure that recruitment as an OpEx function doesn't like increase in cost at the same rate as your revenue generating bit to the business, because what's the point? So doing more with less is very common to say. I like to think of it as reducing the level of effort to make a hire, then scaling up those processes as part of the scaling journey, rather than mashing huge amounts of human resource at the top of an inefficient funnel, or the Facebook method, as I like to call it. So, what we're going to talk about today, I want to keep it really accessible. If you've not seen, but quickly by a show of hands, has anyone already connected with me on LinkedIn or heard me blethering on about LinkedIn? Okay. And people who have not, yeah, the opposite. Okay, super. Well, if you've seen me on LinkedIn for a little while, you know my mission is to empower recruiters with data. Now, when I was first putting things out onto the community, I realized something weird, and it happens if you give a recruiter a platform, or if you give them a microphone. They all turn into Simon Sinek. They're all up here in the clouds. I want to talk about motivation and welcome to my TED Talk, and they're talking high level. But there's 5 million recruiters busting their asses 10 hours a day on LinkedIn, and they're going like, how do I do this one thing? Like, I need this, and it's busting my ass. And no one's talking to those people. And that really kind of annoyed me. So I said to myself, I'm going to post once a day on LinkedIn, weekly newsletter now as well, and it's going to be low level, empowering, data-driven for recruiters. So that's kind of how I like to do things, and that's how this talk is going to go as well. So it's going to be low level and accessible. So I want something that an individual recruiter can take home, a recruitment lead, head of, even a founder. Okay? Does that all make sense? Yeah? Say amen. Amen. Love it. Okay, I've got a little garage door opener thing, so we'll see how that goes. So, in terms of what we're going to cover, there's so much you can cover when it comes to a business scaling journey. I want to focus in on like the 1 or 2 things that has the recruiters have the biggest control over and the biggest opportunity, and B, I've seen when done not well cost millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars over the course of the scaling journey. So we're going to get into some details around about the metrics that matter when it comes to helping a business scale. Using those metrics, not just as a lagging indicator, but also as a leading indicator, so you can help your stakeholders drive narratives for change. You can kind of really help them change their minds, so they don't just look at you and say, so what, I don't care. And then we'll do a little bit about workforce planning, which is a little bit to the side, but I think is very, very valuable. And there'll be time for Q&A as well. I will not be the smartest person in this room. There's some really clever recruiters out there. Some of them are my closest friends who are just very, very good recruiters. So let's make it really useful. Let's get some low-level questions. Let's solve somebody's problem today. Does that all make sense? Say amen. Amen. Fucking love it. All right. So metrics that matter, the forecasting, and then Q&A. I'm going to be like a Loom video set to 1.5 from this point on. So I want to batter through everything and then get to the Q&A as well. If you want to take pictures, feel free. Feel free to just take pictures of that. I actually quite like it when everyone's phones are up. It makes me feel like Taylor Swift or something like that. So that's what we're going to cover. Why do you care? Why should you care anything about any of this? It's just your company. You're not going to be a millionaire if you solve these companies' problems. So why does it matter to you as an individual recruiter? A couple of reasons. Well, 4 reasons technically. First of all, more hires for the same level of effort. I know everyone's been saying to you for the past 2 years, you need to do more with less, which just means, hey, do me a favor and burn out so we can become millionaires. That's not fun. So you should be able to use this data to find points of efficiency and have a really easy, simple way to continuously improve your process so you're going to get more hires for the same level of effort. That's fine. But there's also another cool thing you can do, which is do the same amount in less time, go pick your kids up from school, go to the gym, be the human being that you need to be to, be happy and healthy and all of that. So it gives you control. It's an empowering thing. You can identify problems and solutions within your business and identify them early, so less stress, more value, and you can get more buy-in from stakeholders. If you go to a stakeholder and want to make a change and you don't have data at your back, it's a pretty short conversation. I'm sure you've already been in those opinion-driven conversations, right? The biggest dog wins. But if you've got data, then you can really drive narratives for change. So I'm about to disappoint you grievously in the next slide. Quick aside, I used to be a magician. For 10 years, I was a professional close-up magician before recruitment, true story. And I once got booked for a hen do, a bachelorette party if you're American, which is a really bad move. And you've never seen 24 women disappointed than when a magician turns up to the hen do instead of a stripper. I'm about to disappoint like 50 people now, much in the same way. Because there are 3 key operational metrics that you need to measure to get a 3-dimensional view of any process, not just recruitment, any process. I've got a background in chemistry. Chemical reactions work off the same mathematics. Building and manufacturing cars, a cup, this garage door thing, the same mathematics governs the principles of the process and throughput. So here's the disappointing bit. That is, these 3 metrics are volume, number of candidates in each stage in a given time, conversion, the number of candidates that go from one stage to the other in a given time, and capacity, the amount of candidates that could be accommodated in a given time, which is probably a bit of a disappointment. You came all the way, you're all sat there like, Southern Bells, fanning yourself in this heat, and I've just basically told you to measure the basic shit that you probably already measure anyway. But there's a lot of value. I'm going to teach you how to squeeze a huge amount of value out of this and why it's so important, particularly for a scaling organization. Let me just define terms on scale as well. Scale, as I said, is not actually that complicated. Scale is essentially you need to increase volume, right? Things need to get bigger. That's your first order of consideration. Your second order of consideration is quality, right? We need to do it with the same caliber. Otherwise, I could just hire all these people here, and that's this year's hiring done. And then cost. I want to make sure that you're not doing it at the same cost because you're going to 10x your cost at the same rate that you 10x the business. You can't do that. Not if you want to pass an audit or get another round of investment, right? So that's what scale really is. So you'll find that actually there's a lot of overlap between this kind of basic data and what we can do with it. And you've probably seen maybe something like this. You've seen some kind of chart like that in your ATS or just a basic funnel. You've got conversion down one side. You've got volume down the middle, conversion down one side. One thing, this is dummy data. Don't judge me on the offer accept rate. I realized when I put the slides together, you're like, I'm not going to listen to this guy. He's got an offer accept rate of 56%. Let's ostracize him. No, that's just dummy data, so don't worry about it. But fundamentally, it's a good representation. If you don't have something like this, I've been building like free BI tools for my mates for years. I will teach you how to build this in 3. It's like 6-page interactive. It's free. You can use a spreadsheet or you can use data from a database, anything you want. I'll do it for you in an hour. I'll teach it you in 3. So we're all mates here. Not for a beer. We'll do it for a beer. It's Wreckfest, sorry. Give me a beer, and I'll do that for you. But fundamentally, this is what we see. But I just said there's 3 fundamental metrics that you need to properly understand every process in the world, including recruitment. What's missing? What's missing? You can shout it out. We're in a gospel church with all the fans. We've got volume. We've got conversion. Capacity is missing. Capacity is missing. Well, that's a bit of a problem if you're about to 10x the size of your process and you're not measuring capacity. Let me give you some reasons why capacity is really, really important to measure, particularly when you're scaling. Because all bottlenecks are capacity problems, then if you're not measuring capacity, you cannot tell me that you know where your bottlenecks are. And if you don't know where your bottlenecks are, you can't tell me that any project you're currently working on right now. Put your hands up if you're working on some improvement project right now. Anyone? Yeah, quite a few of us, right? Hopefully so. You can't tell me that that project isn't sitting behind a bottleneck. And the ROI that you promise your CPO or your founder or your CTO or whoever might not be realized because you're just not measuring something so fundamental. So it's very, very important. What are the use cases of this? Quite a lot for three numbers that's not actually that hard to measure. Process improvement. So you can identify marginal gains. You can look at every single, You can look at every single bit of your funnel, and you can decide in a very specific way, how am I going to make these improvements? If you have a founder who says, we've just got a 35 million raise, we're MetaView, we've just got a 35 million raise, I've got my diamond shoes, I've got my cape, now what? How do we spend this cool money? Well, you could go to your TA and say, we need to double the amount of hires we make with roughly the same resources. That's a really hard ask. How do you even start? Like, what project do you work on to double the number of hires? But what you can do is look at this type of data and say, well, I can't double the amount of hires for the same level of effort, but what I can do is increase our conversion by 4%, increase the quality, converting high quality candidates at screen by 4%, tech stage by 4%, final stage 4%, offer accept 4%. I bet you've probably got a few really specific ideas about how you would do that right now. And marginal gains aggregates. In aggregate, you've done that, you've doubled the number of hires for the same level of effort. But you've done it in a way that's very specific, very particular, very achievable. So you can go to your founders and say, it's not going to be a one-off thing, but this is going to be this project, this project, this project. So that's very handy. Performance management. Hands up if you love KPIs. Okay, you can tell who are the leaders and who are not the leaders there. That's an easy one. What about arbitrary KPIs? Arbitrary KPIs, they're fun, aren't they? You need 12. Why? Because we need 12. I don't care if you burn out. In my view, I've managed dozens of recruiters over the years, but at one time I was managing 6 teams over 5 locations, about 26, 27 recruiters. And you've never seen a recruiter burn out. If you want like a recipe to burn out recruiters, give them no control over the outcomes of the work they do and give them arbitrary KPIs. It's very simple. So you can give them KPIs where you can look at the actual goal, work backwards with this data from the conversions and spit out the level of effort and say, right, that's what the business needs to do to achieve the goals that we said we were going to achieve. What does that mean in terms of your capacity as a recruiter? It means, can you do 24 screens in a week? Probably not. Maybe 12 good screens in a week. Okay, cool. Now we know what to do. Do we get an RPO? Do we hire another recruiter? Whatever it is. But you're using data to measure performance instead of arbitrary metrics. And that goes a long way for your recruiters having fun at work, getting what they need out of their careers, staying with you, retention. And it's just good for your soul. It's good human, isn't it, to just be nice to your recruiters. And stakeholder engagement. It's really, really important to have a basis for continuous improvement that's fundamentally data-driven. Otherwise, you just can't drive a narrative for change with a stakeholder. Have you ever had a stakeholder who's like, I've read the first chapter of the A method, so that's what I want to do. I want to do top grading and back channeling and all that ugly stuff, and you don't have the data to say that's a stupid idea. So if you're measuring this at the beginning of your scaling journey, you get a lot. That's a lot for what is essentially 3 free metrics. You don't need a tool to measure. I'm just going to check in there. Does that all make sense? If that makes sense, scream, Amen! I'm going to do that to a tiring degree, so just get used to it. I'm doing this for my benefit. Technically, I'm doing this because I get access to the really good loos. It's kind of why I said to Frankie I'd do this. Plus, chatting to you guys. So, There's two things that we can now measure from that. There's two little second-order things that we can start measuring. And this is through to lean and the theory of constraints. By show of hands, has anyone heard of lean or the concept of lean? Okay. And what about the concepts of like the theory of constraints? Yeah, they're the same people. So there's a book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. I highly recommend that you get. And there's also a book called The Phoenix Project, which is like a bastardization. It's like a plagiarism of that that's specific to software development. Really, really good way of showing how capacity, bottlenecks, and lean and the theory of constraints can be used to massively increase throughput of hires for practically the same level of effort. When I worked with Klarna, when I was a director at a company called Seed, they were going through a massive scaling phase. Their tech org was going to go up by like 3,500 over the course of the world. When we calculated how many more hires we made just by identifying and elevating bottlenecks using these metrics, we made 450 extra hires for the same level of effort. So figure out what your cost per hire is times by 450. That's what's on offer. And it's you get the credit. You're the TA leader that can empower your recruiters and so on. So it's worth looking into, right? So throughput. What is throughput? Basically, it's a measure of efficiency. There's a couple of ways of measuring it. Feel free to just take a picture and just let me talk you through it. But essentially, it's output relative to input. So it's not just how many absolute hires have we made, was how efficiently did we arrive at that number. From our point of view, it would just be candidates in, employees out. What's the ratio of candidates to employees? There's cool ways of calculate throughput. I'll not go into here, but grab me a beer. I'm doing everything for beer. Grab me a beer, and I'll show you how to calculate throughput, such as like aggregate fill rate of every WIP limit and capacity in your stage. We can get into that after this. But fundamentally, throughput is something that you need to be measuring because you're measuring the efficiency of your process as you scale. And if you see a drop in efficiency, maybe it's a bottleneck. Maybe it's a bottleneck that's sat in front of that £2 million RPO deal that you just signed. That'd be a pain, wouldn't it? It'd be a pain for you, wasting $2 million. Be a pain for the RPO, because they can't prove the ROI, because you're not making any more hires. So there's a lot of value in learning throughput. I've just got ahead of myself there. Good overall use of efficiency. Definitely hit me up after this. You don't have to buy me a beer. I'll just chat to you about it. And then bottlenecks. If there was one bit, I'm sure you want to just go into heat delirium right now or go find a shady tree. But if there's one bit of this talk, if you just had to remember one thing, it's this piece about bottlenecks. Because it's so important and it's massively undermeasured in most scaling businesses. This is what a bottleneck is. So first of all, bottleneck has become a colloquial term for like difficulty. You ever heard people talk about bottlenecks? They're like, I've got difficulty. I had a recruiter at a games company that I was working with that said, where are your bottlenecks? He said, they're everywhere. It's impossible, physically impossible. There can only be one bottleneck. So let's get into the actual definition, and that'll help arm you as a TA leader to find them. Stage of a process where the capacity is smaller than the volume going in at a given time frame. So for you, it might be quarterly, could be weekly, whatever it is. Very simple definition. But what you need to learn is three things. Number one, all bottlenecks are capacity problems. By definition, if it's some difficulty, if it's a low conversion, that might be a symptom of a bottleneck. But what it's not is the bottleneck itself. So you need to actually know what you're looking for when you're looking for a bottleneck that might be costing you millions of dollars. There's only ever one bottleneck in a system because essentially it's the rate determining step of your system. So figuring out where your bottleneck is allows you as a TA leader to go, well, where's best place, if there is a bottleneck here, where am I best placed to put my project resources? If you have a bottleneck at the tech stage, well, you want your recruiters maybe doing improvement pieces at and beyond the tech stage. You'll get more hires that way. But if you have recruiters doing improvement projects that makes it more efficient behind the bottleneck, everything's wasted. It doesn't matter. And bottlenecks create vicious cycles. So we're going to go through a scenario in a second. It's a real scenario. But fundamentally, let's go through the scenario and it'll make sense. So let's say you're a company, you've got like a massive software, like you're scaling the tech org. You're going from 350 to 1,300 over the next 6 years, or Andreessen Horowitz won't give you any more money, and the CEO doesn't get to go buy an island and live a life. So that's where we are. So in this situation, we've got a tech stage where we've got the overall recruiters in aggregate are putting 6 candidates into the tech stage every week. And we've only got the capacity for 4 interviews every week. So let's model out what's going to happen armed with the knowledge of what bottlenecks are. And again, thank you so much for staying with me. And talking data is hard enough in an air-conditioned office. Talking data in an oven that could literally glaze a pot, it's so hot in here, is you guys are superhuman, so thank you. So what actually happens? So week 1, 4 slots are filled, and then 2 candidates have to go to the next week. But that week, you've also got 6 candidates, so 2 of those 6 go into that week. And then the time and stage for every candidate in the whole process goes up by 1 week. In 4 weeks, what's going to happen? In week 3, there's no slots, so it all goes up. So in 4 weeks, the time in stage for a candidate, just the time in stage, now imagine you're trying to get your time to hire down to 28 days, and you've got a time in stage of 2 weeks because of a bottleneck you haven't identified. That's problematic. By week 8, if you don't fix it, the time in stage could be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and on it goes. I was with an organization that had an undefined bottleneck at the tech stage during a major scaling phase that they'd already got the investment, and their time in stage was 8+ weeks. In stage. Very hard to find software developers waiting 2 months just for an engineer to speak to them. Insane, right? And what's the answer to that if you don't know what a bottleneck is? We need more volume, we need more people, we need an RPO, we need an agency. You know, we need to get elements and talentful, and we'll get like a Hunger Games scenario, they can fight for the business, all of that fun stuff. So here's the vicious cycle bit. Remember I said the third piece is the vicious cycle? So, loads of volume hits a bottleneck. Time in stage increases, candidate experience goes down. What happens to conversion? Well, candidates are going to fall out the process, get other jobs. What happens to conversion? You can talk, you're allowed, it's fine. But what happens? It goes down. Conversion goes down, right? Because candidates are dropping out, so by very nature, conversion goes down. But you still need to make the same number of hires, right? So if conversions are down and it's the same number of hires, what happens to the volume needed to make a hire? It goes up. So if there's more volume, what's that going to do to the bottleneck? It gets worse, right? So it's a vicious cycle. It goes round and round. It's a horrible business. And half of the businesses that I've worked with don't even measure it. That's scary as shit, man. Like, let's really think about that. Okay, that's doom and gloom. Sorry, depressed you all. At beer o'clock, no less. I do feel like right now is the kind of like, when I have 2 drinks, I'm really good at pool. And then like 3 drinks and 4 drinks, I get worse. I feel like Wreckfest right now is in its 2-drink era. I feel like we're all getting in the swing of it. So obviously it's a capacity problem. So you elevate the bottleneck. Get more capacity is an obvious solution. So in this case, train more interviewers. Why do you think a lot of new TA directors, when they come into your business, immediately want to talk about bar raises and licenses to hires? It's making it easier and easier and easier to onboard people in a way that maintains quality and doesn't cause these awful bottlenecks. Always the first thing I end up having to look at as well. But you're real jobbing recruiters. You know how hard it is to find recruiters with engineers with Elon Musk syndrome to take time away from coding and all of that good stuff to do half-decent interviews. It's hard. So is there any mitigating steps? While you're doing this, while you're looking to create bar raiser programs and training for recruiters, for interviewers, excuse me, are there any mitigating steps? Well, yes, there is. Yes, there is. If you can't increase capacity, you can reduce the volume needed to just meet the capacity, just meet the bottleneck. So what I'm essentially saying, and I got to say this to the CTO of Klarna once, which was fun, is if you want to make more hires, you have to do less recruitment. Which if you don't have data at your back is a very short conversation. But fundamentally, every bit of volume your recruiters are spending, every bit of time your recruiters are spending to create volume that is larger than the capacity of your bottleneck is wasted time. So why waste it? So yeah, I'm not saying that like give your recruiters like Wednesdays or Fridays off. There are clever ways to mitigate the bottleneck that increases value to the business. So what are they? So we throttle volume, right? Meet the capacity. There's a few ways you can naturally volume. Candidates with like a more niche subject. So we're going to make a bunch of the nice-to-haves must-haves. And then obviously you want to be able, this is where the adaptive KPIs come in, so recruiters aren't afraid for their jobs because you're asking them to do less recruitment. But a more niche subset. So you're going to find naturally less people, but the people you do find are probably going to be more likely to pass the tech stage, which is where your bottleneck is in this scenario, and that does increase hires for the same level of effort. You can focus on diversity. Great time for a diversity piece, right? You know that you don't need loads of volume anymore until this bottleneck is solved. So why don't we like go all in on some really hard like sourcing for people with diverse thought, backgrounds, socioeconomic, everything. And you can really, and then you can say to the business, like, not only are we doing DE&I, but we're doing it in a way that not only doesn't threaten your volume and your scaling, but we're actually improving it all at the same time. And you're just measuring one more thing that you already measure. And then candidates with any specific domain expertise. Like if you've got a skills competitor, go destroy them. Go hire all their engineers, and then you don't have another competitor, right? So that's a couple of ways that you can mitigate this. Lastly, what time are we on? Can someone shout me the time? 10 past, so I've got, oof, I shine light. Okay, we'll go really, really fast. Level of effort. So you can turn all of this into leading indicators. So if you know your historical conversions, you can say, right, for 35 hires, let's say the business want to make 65 hires. You can look through your historical conversion and calculate it, run up the funnel and figure out actually how much volume we're going to need at every step, and then measure it against your capacity so you can forecast where the bottlenecks will be before you even put a stake in the ground or spend any money. It's also very, very important to understand that your stakeholders don't care about recruitment data. I once spoke to a CTO who said, I said, your conversion rate is 44% at the tech stage, and he said, that's great. And I said, why do you think that is great? And he went, well, it just shows we're only hiring the best. No, it doesn't. It shows that there's a serious problem in your ability to make the hires needed to hit your investment milestones. But he just thought that. So that's my fault for giving him recruitment data. Whereas if with the same data, I can say, if you want to make 65 hires, the current rate that we're going, that's going to cost 720 hours of engineering time. That's a feature. Go get a Sharpie marker, go get your roadmap, and cross a feature off your roadmap because you're not hitting it, because you've not accounted for 700 plus hours of engineering time. Then they'll move. Then they're like, right, where do we start, right? And then the rest of it is just kind of like rando stuff. I will share these with you. Hit me on LinkedIn. I want to make sure there's time for Q&A. I've hit most of the pieces. Continuous improvement is good. Here are some tools I will give you for free or a beer. Any questions? Does that all make sense? Super. Thank you. So we've got 5 minutes. Is that right? 5 minutes?
Yeah,
any questions? It can be low level. You can ask me where I got my shirt. I don't care.
Thanks, Luke. Do you think the data being pulled is most importantly coming through the ATS, or do you actually think it's most important to get some kind of recruitment ops team that's putting the data for you? Where is this best to actually be sourced, you think?
Oh, that's a super question. One of the things, this could be another talk, is like governance is one of the biggest deficits when I go into businesses that need to scale. There's not much in the way of like best practices or roles and responsibilities. So the way data is ingested into your business is kind of slapdash and kind of crappy, right? So I'd say try and use your ATS because it's going to be a source of truth, even if it's difficult. If your ATS is really garbagey, then have a look at your SOPs and have a look at governance. Because the ATS itself is not going to be poor. The tool itself is probably just being used poorly. But I always encourage every recruiter to actually measure their own quantitative data. So don't like take GDPR sensitive data out of the system, but get a spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet on my website that you can just use as like a TA tracker for all of 2025 if you want it. I always encourage recruiters to do that anyway, because then they can look at their own individual. This stuff scales all the way up. So an individual recruiter can use this to make more hires for the same effort, get promoted. But also, if they're feeling they're burning out, make less hires for the same effort and for less time and go be a human being, right? So I would say it's kind of both. Stick with the ATS, have a look at governance SOPs, but then also encourage recruiters to actually experiment. It's like, it can be like a little microscope, because you can look in like really specific things that you want to work at. Does that answer your question? Super. Any other questions? Go for it, mate.
I'm gonna get you one as well for one of the reports.
Oh, super.
But my name is Nick.
Nick.
Anyway, you had a very good example on the bottlenecks, right? So train more interviewers to get more hires if that is the bottleneck. But let's say we have the hiring manager survey that we sent recently, and we do ask them for more interviewers so we can hire more because we're bottlenecking. But in response, they're telling us, no, you're not getting more interviewers. Instead, you give us better candidates that pass better. Mm-hmm. So even though the conversion percentage is clear, we have the data. We show this is what is the conversion rate at that stage. Mm-hmm. They want us to instead raise it and just give them those who pass 100% instead of giving us the more interviewers in return. Mm-hmm. What would be your response to that? Or is there also any data that, or from your experience, like how do you approach this?
Do you have a DevOps team? Do you have a DevOps team?
No. Well, we are our own walking DevOps team.
Okay. DevOps engineers are really good at explaining this because they were one of the first in software to actually bring lean concepts into business. They've been making cars like this for like 65 years. DevOps is essentially an application of lean to increase software development pipelines. So the same problems that like all these schooly software like leaders, they've probably had to have that conversation a million times. I would say definitely have the data, definitely look into the lean concepts. If you can explain it in their terms, they know what lean is because they use it to release software faster. So if you can use those terms, that's valuable. I recommend setting up a cycle of continuous improvement. So a ring-fence time, maybe quarterly, to just, because a lot of the conversations you have with your stakeholders is highly operational. I've got this hire, how's it going with this hire? Because if we don't get this hire, then we don't get this release. So it's very operational and doesn't put us in a very strategic role, which is, we find very difficult. So a quarterly cycle of continuous improvement is really, really helpful. So maybe like a 90-minute or even a 60-minute review of all of the quarter's hiring, because you'll see more data, then you can show them more data. You have an excuse to show them like an aggregate of a quarter's worth of data, and then the impact that it's having over the course of like a domain rather than just that person's role. Because any manager's like, I'm Elon Musk, I only want the best, I want A players and Z money and all that kind of fun stuff. But if you say, if we do it this way, we're going to waste 700 hours of engineering time, hadn't you better speak to the CTO or the CEO about that? Is that going to be a threat to any of your milestones? All of a sudden they care about that. Because right now they just think it's recruitment data. So take that data, find a venue to actually tell it them in a strategic place, like a retrospective, and then aggregate as much data as possible, and then translate it into stuff that will scare the shit out of them, like missing milestones for your development of software, engineering hours, so on. Does that answer your question? Super duper.
You would continue to argue that that we cannot really raise the conversion rate as high as they expect, right? It's never going to be.
You can model it out, so you don't even have to take on that burden. You can say, if we do this, this is the level of effort and the cost, and if we do this, this is the level of effort and the cost. Go tell us which one it is. That's fine, right? This is better in my view, and here's why. Candidate experience and all those other good things. But it puts you in a position where you can be more of a strategic leader, because most strategic leaders have trade-offs, right? They don't say, no, and I'm going to throw my toys out the pram. Like, they're giving you trade-offs. This trades time, this trades money. What do you want to do? You're the decision-making machine. So you can kind of like maybe offload some of the responsibility onto the wider business, but only if you've measured the data and you know how to turn it into a business insight rather than just a standard recruitment metric. Does that answer your question? Super. Where are we for time? Is that us done?
We've got time for one more, maybe, yeah.
One more. Anyone? Or are people just desperate to get some ice cubes? Go for it, mate.
Obviously, whether we know it or not, talent partners use data day in, day out with their stakeholders. But for those that find utilizing kind of like true detailed data more challenging than others, because some have a greater affinity to it, what are some good practices or ways of working that you start to really like implement and embed data in your day-to-day work?
Oh, yeah. I could talk for like 55 minutes about this. First of all, make it really accessible. So again, if you want that dashboard, you can literally aggregate all the data for all of the recruiters. Something really cool happens when you give them all access to the same tool. They start playing with it. But what they can also do is, if you're a TA leader, it massively increases your bandwidth, because instead of going, like if I'm Mick Jagger and my outreach conversion is shit, it's like really, really low. But then there's Nina Simone over here in the same team, and her outreach conversion is amazing. Well, without that access to that data, he's going to come to me, and I'm going to have to work with him and coach him, fine. But when that data is accessible to everyone, something really cool happens. They start talking to each other, they start elevating each other. And Mick Jagger might be bad at outreach conversion, but his offer accept rate might be really high. So just make it an actual best practice, super accessible for recruiters, but also make it a best practice. If you build retrospectives, like have your recruiters, when they're building retrospectives quarterly and they know they're on the hook to showing and referencing this data, then it's just make it something that they have to use because of the best practices and the SOPs you have in place. And the ones that don't have an affinity to it will just do it by numbers initially, but then they'll start to see the insight. And as soon as they start to see that, oh, I made this improvement, and now I only need to do 8 screens instead of 10 screens. Brilliant. I can go to the gym on a Friday, or I can finish on a Friday, or whatever, or I can make more hires, get a promotion. That's when it really switches on for these guys. So even if they don't have the affinity to it, just make sure they understand that you're trying to empower them. Because a lot of recruiters are afraid of data, right? Especially as you're an agency, if you came from a shitty agency environment like years ago, 10 before 10, arbitrary KPIs. We're afraid of data because we just feel like it's a weapon. Whereas in actual fact, if you kind of change the mindset of the recruiter, this is an empowerment tool. If you make this improvement, what do you want to do at the time? What were you telling me in your one-to-one? You wanted to do that course on project management? Cool. Improve this by 4% by this thing. You've just given yourself back an hour. Go learn project management, right? So I'd say, I don't want to waffle and go in circles. Does that answer your question? Amazing. Thank you so much for sticking out this brutally hot sauna. And if you have any questions, just come and grab me for a chat. Thank you. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for stopping by, and thanks again to Luke Eaton. Some really tangible, actionable advice there. We'll see you all again at 3:30, where we've got Summer Curtis coming to chat to us about resilience.